Hello. Hi, everybody. Hello. All right. Hi. It's nice to see everybody. I'm here with Gail Borden Public Library bringing to you the program Baking for Kids. And today we are going to be making some sugar cookies. So that's going to be the ingredients I'll go over in just a little bit. Just wait for some more people to join. But if you want to, you can go ahead and set your oven right now to 400. So today, like I said, we're going to be making some sugar cookies, and then we'll read some stories together, and it should be a nice time. So I hope that your guys, the kids in the group, I hope you're enjoying your first day of school break. And these are really nice cookie that you can deliver to your neighbors or drop off at a porch to some family members if you want. I'll go over the ingredients in just a little bit, but I do want to say if anybody, hi, nice to see you. If anybody wants to pop their comments and say hi to me, that'd be great. It's nice to see you, Camilla. I'm glad that you are excited and ready. But if you want to sign up for any other programs that we have going on, they're all on our website. They're on our event calendar, and there's tons and tons of things that we are providing for winter break. I believe almost all of them are full, if not getting to the point to be full. So make sure you take a look to see what's open on our event calendar, and then I will let you know that the January and February program registration has opened, so you can go ahead and start registering for those now if you want to. So, hi Aubrey. Oh, cool. It's always cool when people know each other around here too. Yeah, if you want to start registering for the January and February events, you obviously don't have to register for this program, but tons of other programs happen each week at the library virtually. So if you want to sign up for those, the registration is now open. And I think we can go ahead and get ready to begin. So today we are going to be learning how to make some sugar cookies. Like I said, this is a really simple recipe. I have made all sorts of different kinds of sugar cookies in the past, and these ones are really nice because there's only 7 ingredients. And a lot of the other recipes that I have, oh cool, I love that you're neighbors. A lot of the other recipes that I've looked at require tons more ingredients. So these are really good, and they taste really good. They will be short in the oven, and they harden up so you can put some decorations on them if you'd like. But then they also remain soft, so that's really nice. All right, so I'm going to go through the supplies that you're going to need to make these today. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is our butter. You can use unsalted butter or salted butter, whatever you would like. I'm going to be using unsalted butter. So get those and make sure they are room temperature. You're going to need 3 whole sticks of it. And if they're not room temperature, that's okay. You can pop them in the microwave and soften them that way. I've done it both ways. The cookies end up just being maybe a little bit flatter if you stick it in the microwave, but if you don't have them at room temp, that's okay. And then you're going to grab your sugar. So you're going to need 2 cups of sugar. And then we're going to grab some vanilla extract. You're going to need a teaspoon, so make sure you grab your teaspoon as well. And also your cup for your sugar. And then you're also going to need 5 cups of flour. So grab your flour. And then you're going to need a teaspoon of table salt. And then 4 eggs, which I've got here. And you will also need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So one thing I will tell you, last night I was putting together a dough because it has to go in the fridge, so I'll go over that in just a little bit. But if you grab a bowl to put your eggs in, that will just help you in the when we put it in with the sugar and butter. So another thing you're going to want, or it's optional, but if you have a machine like a KitchenAid to help do the stirring for you. This just really helps to incorporate the sugar and the butter together. If you don't, then that's okay. You can either use a handheld one or just use your arms. It's going to take a little bit more work to use your arms, obviously, but you will be able to incorporate it. For speed's sake, I'm going to be using my KitchenAid. So I think I've gone through all of the ingredients. Oh, one thing, a couple more things that you'll need for to make these. So you'll need a large bowl. If you don't have a KitchenAid, then grab a handheld mixer or a large spatula for your butter and sugar. And then you're going to need a rolling pin. And if you have a mat to put your dough on, grab that out. If you don't have a silicone mat, that's okay. You don't need one. It's not required. And then, of course, any of the toppings that you're going to want for your sugar cookies, go ahead and grab those. So this recipe is super fun, and it doesn't require tons of effort if you have a electric stirring mechanism. But if you do, then you're going to need some arm work. So later on, when we incorporate the flour, you might want to grab a grown-up to help you put it all together. Okay, so you're going to take your butter out of the paper, and we are going to need 3 cups, or I'm sorry, we're going to need 1.5 cups of butter. So I'd like you to take a look at your butter, and I love that butter does this. So it has all of these different tablespoons, the measurements for tablespoons on here. So you can read that out. So how many tablespoons are on this stick of butter? Can you count them for me? They all should be the same unless you have a half stick. Somebody want to tell me how many there are? There are 8 different tablespoons on here, right? And so the great thing about this is it does the math for you. Let me make sure I get my camera right. So right here it says 4 tablespoons is going to equal 1/4 of a cup. Okay? So 4 tablespoons is 1/4 of a cup. So this is the other 4th tablespoon. So this is telling you that this is 4 tablespoons and that's 1/4. This is 4 tablespoons, sorry, and it's 1/4 of a cup. And then down here it says this is going to be 1/3 of a cup. So how many did I say we need? We need 1.5 cups, so 1.5 cups. So 8 tablespoons equals 1/2 pound, or equals 1/2 a cup. So how many sticks of butter will we need if we need 1.5 cups, and this is 1/2 cup? So I've got 0.5 here, and then I'm going to add, so this is 1, right? And then what would adding 1 more stick of butter be? 1.5, right? So I'm going to need 3 sticks of butter to make 1.5 cups, okay? So let's go ahead and stick your butter in here, and if you haven't washed your hands already, now's a good time to do it. And you can also preheat your oven to 400. I heard mine just went off, so go ahead and preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And make sure you wash your hands. And then you're going to stick these 3 sticks of butter into your bowl. And then we're going to grab our sugar. We're going to measure out our sugar. Okay, there we go. So I've got my 3 sticks of butter in there, and we did a little bit of math, which is great. Drop my towel on the ground, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab my sugar next, and let's grab the sugar out. And you're going to grab your 1 cup measuring utensil here, and you're going to measure out 1 cup. So if you've baked with me before, you know that I'm not totally exact when I use sugar. Sometimes I am if it's more necessary. But what I do is just dump my cup in there, and then I just kind of shake it off. If you want to, you can grab your spatula, and you can be even more exact and sort of push it off. You could also grab a knife if you want to, just to make it even more level there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this in with the butter. So go ahead and put your 1 cup. So I need 2 cups of sugar. So I've got my 1 cup in there, and next I'm going to get my 2nd cup of sugar. You can tell I've been making lots of cookies. I'm almost out of sugar here. All right, so got my 2nd cup in there. And if you have one of these covers, you can go ahead and put it on now. Sometimes this machine kicks out the things that are in there and makes a mess on the counter. So I usually like to move it and rotate this so the opening is actually over here, and then I kind of cover it. So now what I'm going to do, now that I have my sugar, my 2 cups of sugar and my 1.5 cups of butter in my bowl, I'm going to get it ready to start mixing together. And I'm going to shift this over a little so you can see more of what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to set my mixer on so it doesn't wobble or anything, and then I'm just going to start it at the lowest level, and it'll start incorporating the sugar and the butter together. And I'll move this over so you can see it a little bit better. So even with softened sugar, it's going to, be a little bit rough at the beginning. But once it starts sticking to this spoon, what I like to do is just start making the rotations go a little bit faster. So it's not quite there yet. So there it goes. So I'm going to start making my speed go a little bit faster here. There we go. And that's pretty well incorporated. I can sort of see a little bit of sugar on the bottom there, so I'm going to make sure that it's all incorporated together. So if you see a little bit of sugar down at the bottom, just make sure you let it go for a little bit longer. So that looks pretty good to me. It looks like there's no real sugar hanging out anywhere. So next I'm going to grab my bowl, and I'll tell you a funny story from last night. So last night I was making some of this dough to prep it for this program, and I was trying to go too fast, and I ended up putting all of my eggs, I was like, oh, I'll just, stick it right in the mixer. And instead of, having only egg go in the mixer, guess what also went in the mixer? Part of the shell. So I had to start all over, which, is just one of the joys of baking. But I thought it was really funny. So I had to start all over and get all the eggshell out because it wasn't going to come out on its own. It got all crushed in there. So my tip to all of you young aspiring bakers, always put your eggs in another bowl. It just helps you not have to do it twice. So grab a tiny bowl, and let me show you what I'm doing here. You're going to crack your egg and put it right in the bowl. So we need 4 eggs for this recipe. So I've got 1. And you can use brown eggs for this too, or white ones. Either ones work just fine. I usually use large eggs for this. So that's 3 now. And you don't have to make these be at room temperature if you don't want to. I usually pull them from the fridge. Okay, so now that I have my 4 eggs, I'm going to start my mixer back up, and then we're going to plop the eggs in there slowly, okay? So this is where I like to use this little spout on my mixer. So I'm going to start this back up and put it at the lowest level, and then I'm just going to slowly drop my egg in there. So 1 is in there. See how faster it's going now that there's some liquid in there? So now I'm going to do my second one after I see it's sort of incorporated. And you can go a little faster with your speed at this point if you want to, just so it doesn't stick to the spoon. And then I've got my 3rd egg, and it might bring my 4th egg with it. There it goes. So that's my 3rd egg, so I've got 1 more egg. And there it goes. So I've got 4 eggs in there. I'm going to let that stir for a little bit. And while that's stirring, again, if you haven't preheated your oven, you're going to do 400 degrees. And then in the meantime, you can also grab your vanilla. So we are going to do 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So grab your teaspoon. And your teaspoon is the one that says TSP, if you're looking for the little abbreviation there. So teaspoon, and I always like to try to figure out the difference between it. So if you are using a tablespoon, it looks like something that you would eat cereal out of. This does not look like you're eating cereal out of it, right? So it's your teaspoon, so you're trying to stir your tea together. And I bet that's probably where the different names came from, but I'm not sure exactly. So you're going to grab your teaspoon and you're going to pour in 1 teaspoon into your mixture here. And if you want to, you can do this over a different bowl. But if you get a little bit more vanilla in there, that's okay. All right, so you're going to incorporate that totally. And I forgot to tell you, I really like playing with flavors in cookies. Sugar cookies are so simple and taste so good. But if you are a fan of other flavors like spices, like cinnamon, or if you're really a fan of, hi Jill, of different cinnamon spices or allspice, or if you want it to kind of taste like a chai tea recipe, you can definitely add some of those in there, and I would suggest adding some of those spices now. And if you do add any spices, just try not to do more than like a couple tablespoons. You don't want to overpower the cookie, and although if you want to experiment, that is totally fine. And I'm sure your family would love to experiment tasting your cookies. But try not to add too much flavor because sometimes that can ruin the bake. So add a tablespoon or so of cinnamon if you'd like. You can also add a tablespoon of allspice, maybe a tablespoon and a half of cinnamon and a tablespoon of allspice if you want to. And that'll give it more of like a chai tea type of sugar cookie. All right, I'm going to make these just be basic though. They're going to be simple, regular sugar cookies. So I've incorporated my butter, my sugar, my vanilla, and my 4 eggs. And so next we are going to incorporate the baking powder and salt, and then we're going to do our flour. So for our baking powder, we are going to use our teaspoon again. And I love that the baking powders come with this little line right here because it helps you measure things out. So you're going to take your teaspoon, your smaller one, and you are going to just hold your spoon in the baking powder. And you're going to use this little line here to level it out, just like that. So you hold it against this at an angle, and then you level it out. You don't want to hold it up because then your powder will just come right out. So make sure you hold it at an angle. So we're going to do that again. So we've got 1 teaspoon here, and then grab your spoon again so you can practice twice. See, I've got a little mound on there, and then I'm going to just pull it against your lid. Okay, so now I've got my 2 teaspoons in there. I'm going to start my mixer back up again. Oops. And a tiny little bit fell out. So if that happens to you, I just like to put a little bit extra in there, like a tiny amount, just estimating maybe what popped out of your mixer, just to make sure it has sense, especially since a teaspoon of baking powder is not very much, so it might really affect it if it's pulled out of there. So, all right. So next we are going to get our teaspoon again, and we're going to put our salt in there. So for salt, I like to just pour it over the bowl, and then slowly put it in the spoon, and see if I can measure it to be somewhat exact. So see how it's sort of exact on there. What makes up, and what you could also do is take a knife to it as well. If you put it over your sink, you can take a knife to it and level it out. Okay, so I've got my teaspoon of salt in there, and I have all of my ingredients, right, except for the flour. So the flour in this machine is a little bit, it gets a little bit messy. So the good thing about it is I'm going to use this same countertop to roll out my dough. So I'm going to want flour on this tabletop anyways. So if yours gets a little messy, that's okay. You might not want to wait so long to clean it up because this dough is going to have to go in the fridge for 1 hour when we're finished adding the flour. Okay, so now that that's all incorporated, grab your cup measuring again, and we are going to measure out 5 cups of flour, okay? So what I like to do with my flour is similar to what I like to do with my sugar. I take it in there and then I just shake it. If you would like, you can take a knife to the top to make sure that it's extra level. And then what you're going to do is you're going to slowly add each cup to this mixture while it is going. So I've got 1 cup here. We're going to go for 5 cups. And see how it's already getting all over the table here? That's okay. Flour is probably the messiest part about baking because it just gets everywhere. Okay, so I've got 1 cup in there. Now I'm going to add my 2nd cup. So I've got 3 more cups to go. Okay, so see how that mixture is just getting a little bit more thick? If you are doing this at home by hand, you might still be just at your 1 cup just to incorporate it all. I would suggest if you're doing it by hand, you do not add all 5 cups at once just because it's going to get really tough on your arm. And at 4 cups, you can probably start mushing it together. So if you are doing it by hand, you can use your fingers to sort of, if you don't mind the sensory or the mess, you can start using your fingers. So I'm on 3 cups, so this is my 3rd cup right here. And do you hear my machine is really working, as I'm sure your arms are if you're working on this by hand. So now I've got my 4th cup here. And I would suggest, you can kind of see that I'm waiting before adding each cup. It's just to make sure that each one is sort of incorporated. I don't want to get, usually if you're using a stand mixer like this, sometimes flour sits at the bottom. And so I don't want that to just sit at the bottom while the rest of it gets really firm. So I'm adding it slowly to make sure that it all incorporates before adding the next one. Okay, and then finally, let's see if I've got enough flour in here. I've got my 5th cup here. There we go. And I'm going to plop it right in there. Okay, so that is all 5 cups. And if you're using a stand mixer like me, you might see that there is some dough on the side of your bowl that's now getting incorporated just because the stuff around the spoon is so thick now it's just pulling it off the sides. So that's what we want to see. I'm going to let this go for just a little bit longer. And in the meantime, if you want to grab some saran wrap, we're going to place this dough on saran wrap, and this is going to go in the fridge for at least an hour. A lot of other recipes call for an entire 24 hours in the fridge. But this one, it's just going to be an hour in the fridge. If you want, they turn out really great. If you want, you can do it 24 hours, but I can never wait that long for cookies. So an hour works just fine too. Okay, so I'm going to let that go. I'm going to grab some saran wrap, and you can grab some as well. And then you can also put away some of the other ingredients, but you want to make sure you have your flour out still because we're going to use that to roll the dough around on. Okay, so I've got my plastic wrap. It looks like this is pretty well incorporated, so I'm going to turn this off here and stick this in the sink there. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to push around some of the flour that's on this table and grab about 2 or 3 feet of plastic wrap here. And you're going to just put it right on your counter. And then you're going to take off your dough. And this is where it gets sticky. So you're going to take your spoon off of the mixer, and you're just going to, if you want, you can use your spatula and push this dough into your bowl. It comes off pretty well usually. Comes off together. And depending on what your grown-ups say, you can you know, get as much of this off here as you'd want. But if you want to, make sure you ask your grown-up if you can have permission to taste your dough. But if you want to, it does have raw eggs, so be careful about that. But if your grown-up says it's okay, you can taste what it tastes like, or you can ask your grown-up to taste it for you, since there is raw dough in this. And you can get sick from raw dough, so that's why I'm saying that. Okay. All right, so now that I've got all of my dough there, or off into the bowl, see how it's sort of on the sides here, sort of stick to the side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spatula and I'm going to pull it off the sides here, because we're going to want as much dough in the fridge as we can, because this is what's going to make our cookies. So if we can save the dough, that means we just get more cookies, right? Okay, so go ahead and plop your dough right onto your plastic wrap there. And if there's any bit left, you can just sort of scrape that off the sides. And then it's really sticky dough, so usually you can just kind of like stick it on there and it'll come off, although that one wasn't, so it was proving me wrong. All right, so just kind of scrape that along the sides there. Okay. And I think that's pretty good. And then you're just going to stick that bowl in the sink to wash it later, but you're going to want that spatula. Okay, so if you see a little bit, like I'm seeing a little bit on here that is not fully incorporated, so you're just going to kind of pull it with your hands and make sure you're not getting off of the plastic wrap here, but just sort of like incorporate it a little bit, like Play-Doh, you know, if you're mixing that together, just so it's not dry anymore. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to take the bottom of your plastic wrap. I should have said try to aim for the middle of your plastic wrap when you're plopping down your dough. If you didn't, that's okay. You can sort of just like roll your dough with it. So now you're going to roll your dough together and you're going to wrap it all up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a square or a rectangle with this dough in the plastic wrap. I learned this from one of the bakers on Bon Appetit. I was like, that's genius, to make the shape while it's in the wrap so it doesn't stick to your hands. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to plop this in the fridge for at least an hour. I'm going to pull mine out of the fridge so I can show you what to do when you're done. So go ahead and put this in the fridge. And I'm going to pull mine out of the fridge. And it is pretty hard. Like I said, I did this last night, but you can do it, you know, right in the morning or just an hour. It works just fine. If you want to, you could also put it in the freezer for 20 minutes. I've also done that, and it works just as good. Make sure you don't do the full hour if it's in the freezer because it will freeze. But if you're impatient, like I have been in the past, you can do that and it works out. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the plastic wrap, and it is a hard dough. So actually, I'm going to put this on a little bit. And what you can do is just hit it with your rolling pin. I learned this off of Bon Appetit too, so I feel like it's, you know, those people know what they're doing, more than me at least, because it's their career. So you can just hit it with your rolling pin, and that sort of warms it up. Okay, so there we go. So now that that's kind of been hit a little bit, I'm going to put my other ingredients to the side. So I have some more space here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my flour, make sure I have that still, And I have a little silicone baking sheet that just helps me with the measurements. This is not required, and I haven't gotten this. You know, I've been baking almost all my life, and I just got this year, so you do not need it. It's helpful to know how large. I was making pie doughs, so I wanted to make sure that I had my dough for the pies to be the size that I needed. So it's not required, but it is nice. So if you have one of these, make sure you put a little flour down. If you don't have one of these, just grab a handful of flour and do the exact same thing that I'm doing. So you're just gonna put it all over your countertop. And I know it seems really messy, but it's to make sure your dough does not stick to your countertop. Okay, so then what I usually do, I kind of spread it all around, and then I put a little pile of it over to the side because I'm going to use that throughout. And then whatever's on my hand, I sort of rub together like you saw there, and then I'm going to put all over my rolling pin for the same reason as we put flour on our table. We don't want the rolling pin to stick to the dough. And whoever thought that flour, you know, whoever thought of that was a genius. I always wonder, like, when did somebody figure out that flour doesn't stick to dough? I think those people are unnamed, but they're really smart. Okay, so now that this has been floured and this is out of the oven and is ready to be rolled out, I usually like to just split it in half and then make 4 different sections of it. It's just too much dough to be doing all at once. So you're going to split it up into 4 different sections. And now that it's been, the reason why it goes into the fridge is because this is obviously not sticking to my hands. Yes, I have flour on them, but when you put it in the fridge, it doesn't stick to your hands anymore. So the great thing about this video is in an hour when yours is out of the fridge, you'll be able to watch this video again and pick up right where you left off. So now that I have my 4 different sections, I'm going to sort of get it a little bit warm in my hand just by sort of rolling it together. And I want to try to keep a square shape just because a lot of my cookie dough cutters are like a tree, or, you know, it just is a little bit, you get more from a square than you do from a circle, at least when I've tried it. But it doesn't matter if it's a circle. All right, so now that that is sort of warmed up, I'm going to grab my rolling pin, add a little bit more flour, and you are going to roll it out. So what I usually do is I roll like this and just lift up my fingers and sort of push with my palms. If you have a different type of rolling pin, which let me grab that real quick. If you have one of these, it rolls by itself, or it might require you to sort of do the same thing. So this one here rolls by itself and the handle stays still. If you have if you have a rolling pin that it requires you to move your handles to roll it, and this pin doesn't roll on its own, you're going to use the technique that I'm using right here. So you're going to put your fingers up and use your palms of your hand and sort of push it out. If you have a rolling pin like this, you're going to let the rolling pin do its work for you, where you just sort of like push it forward and it'll roll for you, which is nice. Either one works really well. I like this one because I can have a little bit more, control over it than the other one. So you're going to roll these out to be 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. If you go smaller, like I am going right here, I'll show you sort of what it looks like. So this is probably about 1/2 inch. You're going to stick it in the oven. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. You're going to stick it in the oven for 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the size. So when I've done these before and did them a little bit thinner, my oven only needed 3 minutes. So that part will go really quick. So make sure you pull them out before they start looking burnt. So I'll show you that process though, because that's, I think, the hardest part about sugar cookies is knowing when to pull them out of the oven. So you're gonna roll this out and we'll do that process together so then you don't feel alone. Sorry, grab my cookie cutter. So I've got a Christmas tree cookie cutter or a winter tree. And so once you're at the point where you are good with the thickness of your cookie, you can start to press them. So I actually want this to be a little bit thinner so they go quickly in the oven and I can show you what it looks like. But for your first batch of cookies, I really recommend sitting and watching them come out. So I am I like to move on to the next thing. I'm an efficient baker. I like to, if something's going in the oven, I'm doing something else. And that's a really great way to be. But sometimes that means that the cookies in the oven, especially the first batch, get burnt. So make sure with these ones, if you've never done sugar cookies before, you are sort of watching the oven. Keep the door closed if you can, but turn on the light so that way you can make sure they don't burn. So this is a pretty good thickness here. So I'm going to just start pressing my cookie cutter here. Whoops, pulled that out too fast. So actually this is a good example. I'm glad that happened. So my cookie is missing the top of the tree, right? So if that happens to you, it's okay because you can sort of just push it back on. With sugar cookies, it will show up a little bit, the crease, but you can cover it with frosting. So if that happens to you, just stick it back on and nobody's the wiser. Okay, and there's a little bit sticking here on my cookie cutter, so I'm just gonna sort of tap it in the flour so it comes out a little bit nicer for me. There we go. Okay, so now that I've got my trees, I don't know if I'm going to fit another one. There we go. Okay, so now that I have my trees, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab my cooking pan. My oven is already preheated to 400. And you can stick these right on to the pan if you want to. But I do suggest maybe getting some parchment paper, so that way you can sort of, I don't know, it just is, I don't really know what parchment paper does, but I know it helps the cooking process. So if anybody knows what the parchment paper specifically does, put it in the comments, or it's a great thing to look up afterwards for both you and me. So I'm going to grab some parchment paper here. All right, so now I'm going to grab some parchment paper, put it down on the sheet here, and I'm going to put my cookies on to the parchment paper. I do reuse my parchment paper. I don't know if you're not supposed to, but for these cookies, it's never done me wrong. So I don't know if it's something I should do or something that is okay to do, but I've done it. So here's my cookies. I'm going to stick them all on here, and I'm going to stick them in the oven. I am using a dark pan, so that's part of the reason why my cookies end up cooking a little faster too. The dark pan just heats up faster and at a higher temperature, so these might, like I said, I've done it where it's 3 minutes in the oven and they were done. The indicators I've learned have been very important because everybody's oven is different. Everybody's pans are, different. And so when you are baking cookies or baking anything, make sure you're looking for the indicators. So the indicators to know that sugar cookies are done is a tiny bit of browning on the sides. Not barely like a whisper of a browning. So it's like, I don't even know what color it would look like. But you don't want it to look too brown because that means that it's not done yet. What you can do is if you pull it out too early and you're noticing that there's some like darker spots or it just looks like it might be raw in the middle, you can pop it back in for a couple minutes and that's fine. That's worked out just fine for me in the past, but you can't take them back from being burned. So make sure you don't have them in there for too long. So I'm going to pop these in here and I'm going to wait with you for 3 minutes and I'll press some more cookies and show you what to do with your remnants here while these bake. So I place them in the center rack in my oven at 400 degrees and I'm going to set my timer here to be 3 minutes because that's how long it's taken in the past. Okay, so I'm set my timer for 3 minutes, set it off to the side here, and then I'll show you what to do here. Like I said just earlier, I like to do something while these are cooking, but if you've never made sugar cookies before, you might want to hang out in front of the oven so you know exactly how much time to put them in your oven. Like I said, everybody's oven is different, so I can't tell you that part of it, unfortunately. So it's sort of a wait and see what it looks like type thing. Okay, so after you've made your first batch and you know exactly how long they need to be put in the oven for, you will grab all of the remnants here and just make another bowl or ball and you're gonna do the exact same thing you did just before. You're gonna roll this ball out. So I like to squish it first so it's a little bit easier to work with. And you're gonna pull and you're gonna try to make them the same shape or the same thickness as they were before, especially if you use the same pan. So if you saw what I put on there, there was only 6 cookies on there. Usually I like to fill the pan, but you want to do that only if you can make sure to get the same sort of thickness, because then you'll have some cookies that are done and some cookies that are not done, and you want to make sure you're not burning them. So then when you got your thickness right, you are going to make more of your cookie, you're going to cut more cookies out. So this is a really fun part of the baking process. I really like making the cookie cutter, using the cookie cutter and then rolling out the dough. The rest of it is sort of messy and it's fun, but it gets to the end route. And my favorite part is decorating the cookies. So let's see. All right, so now that these are cut out, I would put them on my pan. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So you saw me roll this up, and then you're going to roll it out. And see how my dough now is sticking to my rolling pin? That's okay as long as you can kind of get it off. But I didn't put any more flour on the back of that, so that's why I did that. Didn't put any flour on my rolling pin. Okay, so I rolled that out. And the yield that I get for each one of these is smaller and smaller. So that last one, I got 2. This one, I got 1. So it really is, you know, when you're rolling it out, I know you're going to want to try to get as many cookies that you can, but it's really more important that they're all the same thickness. So even if you only get 1, that's okay. You don't want to burn your cookies, so at least it's one that's going to be edible rather than one that's not, so, or that's burnt a little bit. So my timer's going off right now. I'm going to grab my oven mitt here and take a look and see what it looks like. Oh, those are not quite done. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And here's how I know it's not quite done. So see in the center there how it looks darker than the outsides? That's how I know it's still raw in the middle. So if you see that, you know you can pop it right back in the oven, okay? So I'm only going to put it back in there for 2 minutes because the outsides are starting to get done. So I'm going to only do it for 2 more minutes instead of another 3. And, you know, if I told you before, last time I did this, it was only 3 minutes per pan. So it's funny to see, even with your own oven, how, you know, sometimes it takes quicker and sometimes it doesn't. So now that I've rolled out a good amount, when this comes out of the oven, I'll show you how to bake. And I did have some stories today, but you know what? I think we're getting close to our time, so we might not have time to share those stories. But I do know that there are a couple STEAM programs this week, and then story times will start back up in the first week of January, or the second week of January, and then I think there's going to be some things on Facebook posted this week. I don't think it's any live programs, but make sure you check those out because those will help fill the void of our story times. Okay. Oh, and we also have, I want to give a shout out to this. If you've got any preschool kids or young elementary kids, we have a Noon Year program. So we usually have that every year in the library, Happy Noon Year. So it's sort of like the New Year, but at noon. And this year it's on, I believe, the 30th of December. So you're going to want to check that out. It does come with a kit and it is registered. So see if it is full or not. But that's going to be a really fun program. They've added some balloons and some fun stuff for the kids. So you're going to want to check that out. That is next week. So, all right. So let me see where we're at with this. I've got 20 more seconds, but I want to check to see. Those are looking pretty good. So let me grab my mitt. I'm going to give it that last 20 seconds. So for these cookies, I only need to be putting them in for 5 minutes in the oven. So that's good for you to know. You might want to start with 5 minutes, but you'll see what happens. Oh yeah, and School Year Reading Program. Thanks, Jill. There's a School Year Reading Program. Make sure you sign up for that. That is all year round, but you get different prizes based on the month. Ooh, I gotta get these out of the oven. I always forget. So that's a program that's all year round. And it's school year round, and it's great for every reader. You can start now. It officially started in September, but you can start at any point in the school year, and we'd love to have your kids be registered and earning prizes. So I'll show you what these look like. These are done cookies, and let me see if I can pop one up. This pan is very hot, so make sure you have a grown-up help you with this part because it's very, very hot. So I don't know if I can show you these or not, but let me see if I can get as close as I can. So you can see sort of how like this one here has some little bit of browning on the edge, just a smidge, and you can sort of see underneath here that dark shadow. These are done. And what you're going to want to do, because these are like, I don't want them to even be any more cooked, you're going to pull this parchment paper off of the pan to make sure they stop cooking. So I'm going to go put them on a different counter. Let me see if I can swing you around here. Let's see. You're going to follow me with my computer. Okay, so you're going to plop these down and pull them right off the pan. And you could probably saw one of my cookies broke, so do it a little bit softer or a little bit less quick. But what you can do with this one, what I will do with this one is I'll just put a little bit of frosting in between and nobody will know because it'll harden up. So let me show you the bottom. This is a little bit more brown than I would like, but it is a done cookie. So any more done and you would have started to see that brown up on the top. But this part right here is good. This is what you want it to look like. Let me see if one got maybe more brown. This is where you're getting into the trouble zone. It's still going to taste great, but you are going to make sure, you don't want the rest of the cookie to look all like this. So that's getting to your trouble spot. So that's sort of what, this is a perfectly done cookie on the bottom. So then the top is just going to be nice and sugary and white. So there you go. So that is how you make sugar cookies. I hope that you enjoyed the program and that you learned some really great things. Great, I'm so glad that Cammie and Zion loved the baking. We will be back in January, and I can't remember what we're baking. We're either doing cinnamon rolls or we're going to learn to bake bread. So check out Communico to see what we're doing that day. It should be a really fun program, and I hope that you have a great winter break. I hope you read some really great books and sign up for our school year reading program. And we hope to see you guys very soon back in the library. We miss you, and we are wishing you all just a happy holiday season and a really happy new year. So bye. Thanks for coming.